Okay, everybody, let's talk about what are the consequences of cohesion. Cohesion is great. If you've ever been in a cohesive group, you know you have those close bonds perhaps with your group members. You really felt as if your group could accomplish something, if it had like that task cohesion we talked about. So being cohesive group is in general a good thing, but it does have some drawbacks. One of the things is that a cohesive group is very intense. So, and again, it has that effect. It may have that effect of that strong change in your social identity. It may even change your sense of self. Being that group member really feels intense. In a way, you might lose your sense of self to some degree. So there are some negative consequences to cohesion, and we'll talk about some both positive and negative consequences. There's the discussion in the textbook by Donald Roy about where he participated in this terrible menial job, but that the way that the workers kind of got together and formed cohesiveness, kind of like that social cohesion, really, then they made it more fun. So even though they were doing a lousy job, they were having fun together, it was cohesive, and they enjoyed itself. You could probably think about experiences you might have had. There are people out there who work in pretty lousy jobs, but they like the people they work with. So they stay with their jobs, even though the job they don't like, but the people they do. So what are some of the positive consequences of cohesion? I think we've touched on some of them already. You're going to be satisfied. You're going to be happy being in this group. Furthermore, you might enjoy being in this group. There's not going to be so much tension. If you've been in a group that is not cohesive, where there's infighting and backbiting, that is very tense. It's very unpleasant. One good consequence of cohesion is that you're very engaged in the group. You're not just simply sitting there and just bored and rolling your eyes. You're really engaged in the group. Now, I'm hoping, for example, in this class, that when you join with your group members, that you develop a sense of cohesion, that you form connections with each other, and that makes you more engaged in the activities that I'm assigning for you. Reduce turnover. Yeah, if you have a very cohesive group, there are going to be people who are going to be less likely to leave. We talked about the fast food establishments, people coming and going, a lot of turnover. There's not going to be a whole lot of cohesion there. It probably isn't going to be the happiest place in the world to work. Finally, the idea is that you're going to stay in this relationship longer. You have that intense commitment to the group. You're going to be less likely to leave. You're going to be more likely to stay. Now, what are some problematic consequences? This intense emotion that you have being in the group can kind of be draining. You might lose yourself in the group. Furthermore, when things go wrong, there might be, it might hit double hard. The old sergeant syndrome, if you read about that in the textbook, the idea is that, you have a very, very cohesive group, and then when someone has to leave the group for no fault of their own, it can be very distressing. You're going to really, really miss that person, or you're going to really, really miss the group if you've got to leave. So that's a problematic consequence. You might find that there is increased pressure in terms of maybe have this goal that you have set. Now you really feel as if, I'm really in this cohesive group, I'm really committed to the group. Boy, I don't want to screw up now. I want to make sure that we get that we're successful here. There might be some hostility that comes about, hostility perhaps towards other groups, towards people who might be rivals, or there might be some hostility in terms of maybe people don't, maybe you feel as if well, Joe over here isn't sufficiently committed to the group, so we should get rid of him. That kind of thing. So, that kind of stuff might develop. And finally, groupthink, and we'll talk about this in a later chapter, how the aspect of being a cohesive group might actually lead you to not want to create dissent. You may want to always feel a pressure to agree with your group members, even if everybody's agreeing on something that's really not a good idea. So you kind of you don't bring up dissenting viewpoints because you don't want to disturb the cohesiveness of the group. So there can be some problematic consequences. Now, what about productivity? Are cohesive groups more productive? Well, it turns out that for the most part, yes, that there are these types of cohesion: social cohesion, unity, task cohesion, related to this overall concept called cohesion, and it does indeed predict performance. So your cohesion does predict performance. But what's interesting is that an even better predictor is that performance can actually increase cohesion. So what this means essentially is, as groups become more successful, as they accomplish more things, they actually grow in cohesiveness. Groups that become successful get closer together. Think about teamwork. You think about teams that are winning teams. You may have a team that maybe they are not that cohesive with each other, but let's say they go on a big winning streak. Well, during that 10-game winning streak, they really grow closer to each other. So the performance actually can increase the cohesion, and that's been shown. It's also important to consider norms, that certain kinds of groups may be more geared for performance, and other kinds of groups might be more geared for just having fun. If you're in a group that stresses performance and productivity, you could say a high level of task cohesion, well then the more cohesive they are, the more productive they are going to be. What about a group that's cohesive? What about a group that their motto is kind of having fun with each other and not really caring about the work that needs to get done? Oh, the work will happen. Don't worry about it. The more cohesive they are, the more likely they maybe kind of have that social cohesion. Maybe they're friends with each other, they're happy with each other, but maybe they're not really focusing too much on the work. So if the cohesion is going to work, it has to be a group that is still committed to a goal of productivity.